Hello and welcome to Hanratty on Karate. I hope you enjoyed the series on Funakoshi's 20 precepts. They're just my analysis of what Funakoshi said. As I mentioned in the series, he never did write any synopsis of what he wrote. He didn't break it down or explain it or even comment on them. He just wrote them down. But also, as I mentioned, he was pretty old-fashioned Okinawan gentleman. And when you looked at him, I guess even now looking at pictures of him, he didn't really look as though he would be doing karate, let alone becoming the figure he was. One thing that I know about Funakoshi, and it struck me through all of his life, he didn't like the competitive side of it. The competitive side came in later, mostly between the university teams. KO, one of the first universities, they brought in, freestyle fighting because they wanted to test themselves. They were young men. They had a martial spirit. They were doing a martial art. It was a good way to see if what you were learning actually worked. Beside the philosophy, making you self-confident, a leader and a gentleman and trying to better your character, all the other stuff. It's hard to get younger people to absorb that kind of philosophy when they're learning a quite physical martial art. They want to try it out. It's like a boxer never having a fight. He would never know how good he was. He may think he's good, but you've got no way of judging it. The only other way you've got is the grading system, and the grading system was brought into karate only through the Japanese because they wanted to know how a person achieved certain levels, whether they were qualified to instruct or not. And that's quite understandable. They have gradings for everything. So everybody wants to know the grading, and I believe in the grading system. I think it's great to set goals. Also just gives you a little bit of insight as to where you are in your training, if you're doing your best or not doing your best, as somebody's going to tell you. You need to try a bit more, or learn this technique, practice this technique more, and so on and so forth. And competition is a challenging way and a safe way to also kind of test yourself and your technique and your level. So I was at a competition at the weekend, and a few things struck me. Now, competitions are quite well organized, and unfortunately there's so many organizations, even within the one style, Shotokan. And I know Shotokan is a big style and practiced by millions of people, and you would think that it would be easy for all those people to get together and go, look, we're all doing the same thing, why won't we do it like this? And of course the JKA would like you to do it that way, but not everybody agrees with the JKA politics. And I think the thing that divides people, there's two main things that divide people, and this is the two main things that divide most of the politics that we see, and that's ego and money. Okay, ego and money go hand in hand with political organizations. It's very obvious. So if we could get rid of them, if you listen to the precepts of Funakoshi, you're supposed to get rid of them, but obviously we don't. Okay, so what happens is you have two distinct styles of competitiveness. Actually, there's more than that, because Uechiru also uses like a Bugo style where they have like full padded armor and helmets on. I'm talking about just kind of traditional karate, if you like, and sports karate, the two main styles I'm thinking of. One uses old Shobu Ippon JKA rules, and the other is WKF rules. Now, in both of these styles of competition, the international rules and even the national rules that the national teams utilize for their competitions are not really suitable for local competitions. We have to have some modifications. Now, there's lots of things that can cause modifications or require modifying in local competitions, and one of them could be lack of officials if you don't have enough trained officials in your area. In Canada, this is quite obvious because we're an extremely large country, second largest country in the world, and so we're geographically challenged in a lot of aspects. Unless we have a very dense population area, we tend to be spread out. I notice this when I'm in Alberta, which is one of the prairie provinces, probably the most western of the prairie provinces. We don't have the population of British Columbia, BC. We certainly don't have the population of Ontario and Quebec. And we're quite a large province, area-wise. So we've probably got maybe, I don't know, 5 to 7% of the, say, the UK population just in the one province. So it's kind of tough to get enough officials sometimes to run a decent competition. And it's also difficult to get enough entries. And so if you're putting on a competition, if you want to make it available, you want to give people a chance to compete, what I do with my competitions is I open it up. Basically, the kumite rules are the same, but we open up the kata. So it doesn't really matter which style kata you do. Whether I know the kata or not, I've been around the international scene a long time, and I've refereed for WKF and for JKA style competition. You get to recognize kata. Besides, if you follow the criteria for judging kata, it's all there. You know what a strong technique is. You know if a person's losing balance or not, if their eye direction's right, and if they've got kime or focus in the technique, if it's the target, and if they're using the whole body or just hands or whatever. You can judge all of this. It's the same criteria for basically any kata or form. And so we have competitions where we have even kung fu practitioners come in and they'll do their form. We let it go when they come up and give us the history to the judges before they perform the kata, which I don't think there's any call for, but, that's up to them. We don't allow any freestyle kata, and we certainly don't allow musical kata. Freestyle stuff we leave to the States, where they tend to scream their heads off at every movement. Anyway, with the competitions that we run, as I say, modification of the rules, you need to implement that, otherwise you're not going to get a decent entry. And it's not going to be a competition if you don't have a decent entry. The competition we just went to last weekend was put on by the local JKA group, and they've got a fair membership, but they don't have the official training that they should have, or they'll say, this is the JKA way. And yeah, it might be the JKA way, but JKA as a body in itself can probably pull 300 or 400 contestants. When you're only looking at maybe 70 or 80, then you're going to have to change your rules a little bit and modify it to suit what you have and what you're trying to portray as an organization. You need to encourage people to come to the competitions. I look at it this way. We run a few competitions a year, and this year will be our 45th annual one. Yeah, 45th. I've been here a while now. We missed one, I believe, during COVID. We couldn't hold it during COVID, so we missed one there. And so we're on our 45th annual, and we always run it the same time every year, the first weekend in May. That's our spring tournament, and we have a fall tournament that we run in September, October. We used to use them as training tournaments for the when we were a member of WUSCA, which was the World Shotokan Karate Association. Really good karate, great karate. If you want to watch good Shotokan karate, watch a WUSCA tournament. Or a JKA tournament, you're always going to see good karate there, of course. But on a local level, you can't implement the full rules as they're written down in the rule book, as the JKA rule book or the WUSCA rule book or ESCA rule book, which is European Shotokan Karate Association. And the official training that they have for these events with the certification and everything else isn't possible on a local level. So we have to give up some things. But that's not to say that you cannot have good referees. First thing you need to do to get out of your referees is to let them know that ego is not important. It's not about the officials, it's about the competitors. Now, I've had a few people say to me, even at international level, you couldn't have a competition without officials. Yes, you can. You do it in your dojo all the time. You're sparring in your dojo, basically it's a competition. You don't need an official. Somebody will tell you straight away if you've scored a nippon, usually the guy that gets kicked in the head. Okay, he'll go, good kick, that was in, right? So, yeah, you can have a competition without officials, but if you do have officials, make sure that they get rid of their ego. Also, you need to teach them enough to make sure that they're confident in the ring. There's nothing worse than to see a center referee trying to run a ring when he's not confident in himself. The thing that gives them a lack of confidence is if they're not sure what the terminology is. Now, the terminology really doesn't matter. You can say face punch, or you can say jodanski, whatever you want. You can say stomach kick or chudangeri. It's up to you. It's how you're trained. So you wouldn't let anybody fight if they didn't have the techniques and they weren't able to defend themselves. So why would you throw in an official that didn't know what he was doing, or is so lacking in confidence that he's not really sure what he's doing? This is going to translate to the competitors, and this is where you get injuries. Now, your first and foremost job when you're running a ring is the safety of the competitors. Even if you're a judge, the safety of the competitors is paramount. That's why we have rules. If we didn't have rules, it'd just be a fight and we wouldn't need you. Okay? So safety of the competitors is paramount. And you have to decide, and I've got this at every single officiating seminar I've ever conducted. You get this every time. How much contact is contact? What are we giving for this? Now, if you don't know that, then I suggest don't be a center referee, okay? And be even aware of how good your judging is. Everybody should know the difference between a touch and a hit, okay? So often you see people, and they'll just touch, and the referee will give, not sufficient, or weak technique, Fujibon weak technique, and he won't give the point. There's just another thing too. Stopping a match just to tell somebody it was a weak technique or it was a missed technique is wrong. There's only two reasons you stop a match. One is to give a score or to give a penalty. That's the only two. So jogai, of course, that's a penalty going outside the ring. Excessive contact, of course, it's a penalty. But a miss, no, it's not a penalty, okay? The technique failed, there's no reason for you to stop the match. And obviously, the guy who threw the technique, he knows it misses as well. So this is another reason, shows up in lack of confidence. He's not sure what he saw. You should be taking a little picture in your mind as you're walking back to your spot. You analyze that picture, you see where it touched, who touched who made the technique, and look around, see what your judges say. Also, calling the judges up for consultations is another aspect of showing lack of confidence, all right? It's very simple. Everybody has a vote. 4 judges have a vote. And if they didn't say, May and I, they didn't say, that's fine. They lose their vote. But waving a technique off is a vote. If they didn't think that it scored, then they're entitled to say so, and that's their judgment. And they can say it was out of distance, that's their vote. They're judging it was out of distance. If they say it was excessive, that's their judgment. They can say it's excessive. Now, the referee also has a vote. So if you get 3 didn't see, 1 flag, the referee can adjudicate between the 2, and he can either nullify it or give a score, because he's equal votes. 2 flags, you're going to have a good look at it. But he's still got a 2-1. So it's going to be a score if 2 didn't see, right? And don't be scared. I get a lot of people saying, they should never be given simultaneous technique, right? But why not? Sometimes guys come rushing in, the guy sticks his fist out, the attacker touches at exactly the same time as the defender. Of course, why not? So this was a few things that came up, and what I noticed was just a lack of confidence. And so people make mistakes when they're not confident in what they can do. So unless you've got the ability to hold that ring and have the respect of the fighters in the ring, I'm talking about kumite, then it's not going to work. Also, have a look at how many juniors, and I say this because I see juniors being put in, junior black belts being put in as referees. And very often, the people competing are higher grade and they know what they're doing. Probably isn't their first rodeo, and so they know exactly what they're doing. They know when they've scored and when they haven't. Have a good look at this. Other thing I noticed was use of black belts, and these are junior black belts who just competed in a previous event, and then they're asked to take the corner for the next event when the senior guys need to compete. Not good. I'd rather see cut down on the number of judges, and don't be afraid to use a shadow ref system. Shadow ref, actually used to use it a lot when I was fighting in the 70s at Crystal Palace. All the eliminations were done with a shadow ref, okay, so a mirror ref, whatever you want to call it. So 2 center referees, one's the senior referee, one's the shadow, okay? But it's usually a great synergy between them as to when there's a score and when there isn't a score. You don't miss much. It's very quick, it's very precise, and it's usually spot on with the decisions that are made. So don't be afraid to use a shadow ref instead of, oh, well, it looks bad if we don't have 4 corners. You got 4 corners and 3 of them are putting flags up because they haven't got the confidence to give a decision. They're putting Manai didn't see. Then useless, right? You might as well just have the one guy in the middle running it. So shadow refs, I think, are a really good idea. Also, you have access to probably more senior people who are going to give correct decisions. When you're looking at a competition, what you want is the best guy to come through and win the gold or whatever, right? If you get discontent as that should never have been or that was a wrong decision and all that, you got to really analyze it and find out why. Now, what I do is I have an after competition meeting with the officials, and I'll tell them how good they did or what they have to work on or what they should be looking for if they're looking for the wrong thing. And especially in kids competition, where they're doing Jukumite or Shobuipon is what we use, even for the little guys. You encourage them, right? So if they go maybe an inch out of distance, then give them the point. Because if you don't, the next time they want to go in, they want to go into half an inch. You don't give them the point. Next time they're going to go in, they're going to nail somebody. So you got to encourage effort, encourage ability, encourage technique. This is what we're trying to see, where we are and how good our technique and ability is. So you should be training as much for officiating as you are for competing. And try to get your older black belts involved or your older students involved in officiating. It's a worthwhile thing. And usually the older people will carry a little bit more respect. And once you start to show confidence and you get respect in the ring, the fighters are going to feel a lot more comfortable and you're going to get a better competition out of it anyway. Okay, so there you go. Just my thoughts on competing in local competitions. And I've competed in everything from provincial, national, international, world competitions. And I've given seminars and instructional seminars on officiating in all of those areas. And some of the best referees I've ever seen, I've worked with in the ring. They always carry themselves well. They always have super confidence, as I do. I think I do. And that transfers to the competitors. You're going to get a better fight. You're going to get a safer fight. You're going to get cleaner, and it's going to be more enjoyable for everybody. What I like is when we have a competition, and of course the competitors know who won, but they don't remember who the ref was. Perfect. I'm not there for me, I'm there for them. Okay, so just my thoughts on officiating. If you got any different, let me know. Take care.